Hi everyone, this is Counseling 4000, Chapter 10, Bringing Up Difficult Issues. Confrontation. When you have a concern about something the person has said or done, their well-being or possible destructive behavior. Okay? Generally thought to be bringing something into the open, usually in a harsh, aggressive manner, but used to address things that the client may be avoiding or denying. So have you heard of someone confronting you? That's what we're talking about now. Sometimes our clients are in such denial that we need to actually confront them. This is not the way that you should approach most people when they're talking to them in counseling or as a case manager, but this is for the ones with very difficult or destructive behaviors. You have to kind of, tell it as it is and point these things out because for one reason or another, your client's not willing to admit or address it. And of course, confrontation has to be at a specific time. You don't meet someone and say, "Hi, my name is so and so, and I'll be your case manager. Look, you are doing these things." No, it would be within the conversation, maybe later on, when you feel like they are ready to actually understand that confrontation. Some professionals think that confrontation is useful, while others do not. Some believe it's good for some populations, for example, people who are formerly incarcerated or the veteran community, but please don't overgeneralize. Sometimes people in those populations actually do need a lot more of a tender approach, a more cautious approach, and not such a in your face because maybe they're so sick and tired of being treated that way, being told to do that they were never listened to, right? So again, you have to pay attention to your specific client. Some feels that there's not enough empirical research to know how effective confrontational counseling is associated with high dropout rates and poor outcomes. So what that's saying is confrontation doesn't always work, and a lot of the times it actually doesn't work. When you confront someone and they're not ready, they might not come back to counseling again, and that is a problem. You're actually doing harm to your client that way. Clients become defensive and resistant to what workers have to say. And again, they feel like they have to be on the defense. They have to explain why they did the things they did. And, that might not necessarily make them feel very good. Harsh and reality-based methods that forces people to consider their actions. Teens with self-destructive behaviors and substance abuse addictions. Okay. Again, so this confrontation, another name for it for some people is called telling it as it is or giving them tough love. Okay. Again, I want you to remember that this is not necessarily something that everyone can handle. Okay. No matter how tough looking they are, if they're from prison or if they're in the military and stuff like that, doesn't mean that you should do it this way. It actually can drive some people away because they're going there for help because they know that you're supposed to be more gentle, more understanding, more empathetic. And so when they are confronted with this, which is kind of more a harsh tone, they're like, whoa, what's going on? And they might actually just leave. Exchanging views. Counselors use confrontation as a therapeutic tool. Case managers usually do not use confrontation. However, there needs to be an alternate way for case managers to bring up issues that need to be considered. So again, they're saying that there is a way for you to be confrontational without being so harsh for specific reasons as a case manager compared to when you're a therapist and you're using it in the middle of therapy as a tool. When to initiate an exchange of views, discrepancies. Discrepancies meaning things that don't make sense, okay? So when a client communicates two different messages, that doesn't make sense then. Pointing this out can help the person see the discrepancies, offer another look at the situation and at themselves in a different way. So you might say something like, you're not happy that you're drinking, but you're drinking because it makes you feel better, right? You're saying, well, actually, you're saying that the next day when you're sober again, you don't feel so great, but at the same time, you're saying it does make you feel great. That doesn't make sense. Can you explain a little bit more? Tell me more about this. Situations that contain discrepancies that deserve to be addressed help clarify the issue. So again, when you're asking these questions to an open-ended question, you're going to have them clarify it for you, right? Help you and the client understand each other's viewpoints because now the client goes, oh, I never thought about seeing it that way instead. And if ignored, there may be misunderstandings due to perceptions. Again, what that means is, your value system might be different than the other person's value system because of their culture or whatever it is. So for them to explain it a little bit further will help you understand it. So then you can, be direct and ask them those questions. The person says one thing but does another. Araceli tells you that she really wants to go to the job training program and that getting a job is a top priority for her, but she does not register for the classes. On the other hand, she has numerous excuses for not registering, some of which do not seem entirely believable. So, as a case manager, you can say something like this, which is there have been 3 job fairs in the last 6 months, and we have the applications for a couple of the job readiness workshops. But I'm getting the feeling that this isn't the direction you want to go in right now. Can you help me out with this? The client has one perception of events or circumstances, and you have another. So I'm going to read you 2 perspectives, okay? The first one is from Gustavo. Gustavo thinks you are uncaring and self-involved. He got this idea because you did not come to work the Friday after Thanksgiving, even though the office was open. He was off work that day and wanted to make an appointment with you so that he would not have to miss work at another time. Your perception is different. To you, it was reasonable to be off work the day of the Friday after Thanksgiving because there was only a skeleton staff working that day. You also needed to take a day off before the end of the year or you would have lost some of your accumulated time. Clients rarely come in on this date, and there was a crisis team to cover any crisis that might have come up. To Gustavo, you seem uncaring, while to you, your actions seem reasonable. So again, you can see 2 ways, and then you can address it with the client or Gustavo. The client tells you one thing, but the client's body language sends a very different message. So Gabby tells you that she is fine, that she feels okay, and that everything is all right. She looks, however, as if the opposite is true. She speaks in a monotone, looks at the floor as she speaks, and then appears depressed and disheveled. These are clues that the spoken message and the unspoken message do not match. And so that's something that you can also bring up. I noticed, that you're saying that you're happy and all this stuff, but at the same time, it looks like you're about to cry. So I just wanted to point that out. How do you feel about me noticing these things? The client purports to hold certain values, but the client's behavior violates these values. So Benjamin tells you he likes everyone and accepts everyone. He tells you ethnic differences are unimportant to him and he finds them enriching. In one of his meetings with you, he tells a decidedly racist joke that obviously denigrates a minority group. So again, right here, someone says, I'm not really racist, but let me tell you a racist joke, right? So then those are 2 very different value systems that they're holding. Which one is it? If they are not racist, then, why are they telling us a racist joke? The client has an unrealistic expectation for you. Genesis expects that you will drop everything to see her or to take her phone calls. She does not want to see anyone else in the agency and does not think she should have to see anyone else at night. You are her case manager and she wants you to be there when she needs you. Again, that could be very unrealistic because that means that it's as though you're working just for Genesis, but unfortunately you have more, right? You have more clients, more cases, and you have, let's say, specific hours that you're working. So again, that's something where you need to address it with Genesis. The client has unrealistic expectations for him or herself. So Brian has been in a partial hospitalization program for a number of months and has been sick for about 4 years. Stress seems to trigger his psychotic symptoms, and regulating his medication is difficult. He is very good at cleaning and janitorial tasks around the center, and there's a good supervised janitorial program for clients in which they hold a regular job and clean actual establishments. Brian can have a job there, but he is set on going to work at the highway department and getting a job driving a steamroller. He applies for the job and repeatedly gets no response. Okay, so again, he thinks he can do this, but he really can't, right? And he's not getting the job, and he keeps on repeatedly applying for these jobs, but he can't get it because of his abilities. So then again, you would want to confront or let him know. The client asks for assistance, but actions indicate the client is not interested. So Cynthia asks you to help her find suitable housing so she will not have to stay at the shelter any longer. You have some leads she could pursue, but she breaks appointments calling in to say she was detained and will reschedule. She does follow up on the leads you give her, and the 2 apartments she went to see that appeared suitable she turned down for minor problems, refusing to live there. Again, right there, it's like, she's really desperate for help, but then when help is offered, she's like, no, I don't want it. So what do you want? Do you want help or not? And that's something that can be require a confrontational thing with your client. The client's behavior is contradictory. Contradictory basically means it's going the opposite of way what you think it is supposed to go. Giovanni comes in group and tells the group he will stop drinking. He never misses AA meetings, gets a good job, and begins to help others stop drinking. Later, you learn that he is actually drinking in spite of what he says in group and at AA meetings, and that he goes to AA on Tuesday and Thursdays and to his favorite bar on Friday and Saturday nights. Giovanni's behavior is contradictory in another way. While he talks to newcomers in the group about how helpful it is to stay in group and how wonderful the agency is, he has been denigrating a certain member of the staff outside of the building where he goes to smoke during the break. Again, you can see right there, he says he's not drinking, but he's actually drinking. So again, there's contradiction right there, right? And that's something that you would want to bring up. And also he might say, I really love this program, but at the same time, when people ask him how he feels, he's like, I hate this program. So again, or I hate a person in there. And of course, that means that there's a contradictory issue that's arising right there. You can confront him about that. The client is engaging in behavior that appears destructive. Crystal has been cited by child welfare several times for leaving her two children under the age of 5 alone during the evening while she goes out with her friends. She tells you that she does not want to lose her children and that she does take care to see that they are in bed before she goes out. However, her behavior is viewed as endangering her children's welfare, and there is every possibility that the child welfare agency will remove the children if Crystal's neighbors report her again. Again, you can see right there, if you really love and want to spend time with your children, want to keep your children, yet you're doing irresponsible things, that is a time where confrontation is needed. The client is looking for solutions to a problem. Vanessa needs a place to stay after being in prison for 4 years. She seems to be floundering about where to look and where to start. For now, she is crashing on the couch of her brother's apartment, but the apartment is small, and with the brother's wife and 2 children there, Vanessa doesn't think it's a good solution. She tells you she has talked to someone who knows a guy who has some apartments over on 19th Street. Again, right there, that doesn't make sense of whether or not she really knows how to take care of herself just yet. So you might want to confront and let her know, hey, there's these things that you can do. She might not want it, but at least make a sense of awareness so that she can choose from those things. Using iMessages to initiate an exchange of views. Structure. Number 1. Concerns, feelings, observations about the situation expressed in a non-blaming, matter-of-factly manner. Okay. Number 2, the tangible outcome you believe you see as a result of the possible consequences for the client. So that means things that you can actually sense or see with your eyes. That's what tangible means, as you can touch it or sense it in one way or another. The outcome you believe you will see as a result of the possible consequence for your client. And then 3, your suggestion concerning all of this offered tentatively as a contribution to resolving or improving a situation, and 4, an invitation to collaborate. So this is the structure of how you would use an iMessage. So let's look at some of the examples. Part of being empathetic is being able to sense how the other person will feel when you begin to express another point of view. What you have to say may be painful to hear and harder to consider. What you say must emerge from a genuine empathetic point or concern and motivated by feelings of caring and commitment. So when you say these things, you do have to say it in this tone that shows that you are caring and you're worried and you're thinking about your client's best behaviors and the best concerns for this person. So to a client who is late on Tuesday, we're going to use I statements, okay? So the incorrect way would say, you were late on Tuesday and you held me up. My whole day was behind and I spent a lot of time trying to catch up. Can you get your time straight so this doesn't happen again? Again, that sounds almost like you're scolding the person, right? Instead, let's talk about it through an iMessage with all those different structures that are included in there so that you are respectful. So the correct response would be, I'm concerned about when we got started on Tuesday morning. Starting late got my day behind more than I wanted, and I spent a lot of time trying to catch up. Could we look at your scheduling and mine and see if there is a way we can start on a different time, right? Or start on time. So again, you can see how it's the same message, except for one is done in a more considerate way, the more encouraging way and motivating way, as opposed to blaming someone. To the client who is distressed over having to go before the district justice. Incorrect would be, if you go out there and give the district justice a hard time, all you're going to do is get yourself in a lot of trouble. My advice is to cool down and just to go in there and listen to what they have to say. So you're just telling your client what to do, right? Let's look at the correct way. I guess it just seems to me that you could get in more trouble if you follow through on your plan to give the district judge a hard time about this. I'm thinking it might cause him to be even tougher on you. Let's look at this and see if there is some other way to handle this. Okay, so you're showing still your experience with a specific district justice, but at the same time, we're saying, hey, let's devise another plan. Let's work together and try to make it so that you get out of this the lightest sentence that you can. Empathy to a person having trouble keeping his food stamps. Incorrect way, we can just call down there and find out what they want you to do about keeping your food stamps. Okay? Or the correct way would be, it sounds like this has been so frustrating for you. I'm just thinking that maybe we could make a little less frustrating if we call down there and ask them what they want you to do to keep your food stamps. What do you think? Again, right there, you're giving that person kind of like an option to choose, right? And you still sound like you're on their side, which is wonderful, so that they can work with you together. Because if you don't, and the person feels very, very kind of like, hey, my case manager is against me, doesn't really want to help me, then they're not necessarily going to want to work with you. Incorrect is leaving kids alone at night is neglectful, and that is why the neighbors call child welfare, and that is why child welfare is threatening to take the kids away. Instead, you want to say something like, I wonder if leaving your kids in the evening when you go out with friends isn't seen the same way by your neighbors in child welfare. I'm thinking that they probably think that leaving the kids like that is neglectful, and that is why they call child welfare. What are your thoughts about why your neighbors are doing this? Okay, and so maybe that way they can actually start talking about how actually they're probably in the wrong for leaving, a 5-year-old kid alone at home, even when they went to bed. Maybe what happens if the kid wakes up and needs their parent and your parent is not there, right? So then they can start just like, oh, I guess maybe I shouldn't do these things, okay? Or get a babysitter. To be matter of fact to a person who sees goals are unrealistic for the present. So be matter of fact about it. Do not become excited or judgmental, and refrain, which basically means don't do this, from using words that are derogatory or denigrate people and the choices they have made. So don't be judgmental when you talk to them. So incorrect is you're not ready to undertake a degree program. Instead, you might want to say something like this. Here's what I'm thinking about this degree in biology. It just seems to me that some of your goals are a bit further down the road for you. I'm wondering if we could look at some preliminary steps for you to take first to help you get ready. What do you think? Since we're saying the same thing, which is I don't think you're ready to go into this, let's say, bachelor's degree. However, how about let's think about going into community college and taking a couple of classes first, because the other one is more of a long-term goal in the future, while we're working near future or near the present time instead. Be tentative to a person who may not be seeing all of the issues with his mother. So tentative basically means, be wary, be considerate of what could happen. We don't know exactly if this is going to happen, but it might happen. Okay, so be tentative. What you are putting forth for consideration might not work for your client's point of view. It's not helpful to present your ideas as though they were right. So incorrect way might seem like, or might be, it seems to me your mother is angry at you. Instead, it might be more correct to say something like this. I guess I'm wondering about this problem you're having with your mother. I could be wrong, but when you describe the way she talks to you, it sounds to me as if she's angry for some reason. Do you think we could look at that? What do you think? And again, right there, you're inviting the client to start talking about what's going on with their family, okay? As opposed to just saying, your mother's angry at you, and then not really knowing what the real reason behind it potentially could be. Be tentative. Correct is, I'm just wondering if, I'm thinking that maybe, do you think that one thing we should consider is, and I could be wrong, but let me throw this idea out and see what you think. So these things kind of say, hey, here's another perspective. Have you ever considered? And that's something that's really helpful because sometimes people come into getting a caseworker or therapy because they only see it in one way. They didn't realize that there were other options they could do. And so as a person who is the therapist or the case manager who is aware of the bigger picture, you are there to offer them a different point of view to consider. Focus on tangible behaviors or communication. So these are things that you can hear or observe. Tangible is through the senses, okay? So something that is vague, vague meaning not clear, kind of just like wishy-washy, not very specific. Um, I don't know. I just think that you let people walk all over you. I could be wrong about that, but it seems a little like that. What do you think? Okay, so right there is a little vague. You're not very showing any specific concrete examples. So let's look at one that's much more specific, okay? I don't know. I just think that when Melissa took the rent money from you and never paid you back twice, and then Jessica asked for a loan for a car and you gave it to her, like, they felt like they could take advantage of you, or maybe that they could uh, feel that could use you. I could be wrong about that, but it seems like a little like that to me. What do you think? So you can see right there showing examples, things that someone could hear or see or observe. And you're giving those as examples so they can say, yeah, you're actually right. Twice I lent her rent money and she never paid me back. Why do I expect her to help me out when I need her when she's really just using me? Okay. Focus on tangible behaviors or communication to a client who says she is fine but looks depressed. So the incorrect way would be, you look depressed. What's wrong? Instead, you might want to say, Veronica, it seems as if you are feeling pretty blue about things. Things have been pretty rough lately. I'm thinking maybe we should talk about your mood and how you're feeling. What are your thoughts about this? Okay, again, you're inviting her to start talking, and you've shown her some things that you have noticed visually during your case management meetings. So again, tangible stuff. Timing. It is important to know when to express the concerns you feel need to be spoken. Number one, the relationship must be developed before you introduce your points. So again, this is what I said in the earlier part of this chapter. In this PowerPoint is you can't just confront someone at the beginning. You have to let them, build a relationship with you. You don't want someone who you don't know to say something that might be seen as judgmental, right? You want to have a friend who will tell you. Then you're like, oh, wait a minute, is my friend right? What's going on? And then two, although you may be able to see what issues are involved at the beginning and wish to introduce a different point of view, that is rarely effective. And I know that you sometimes, you think that, your client doesn't know anything, but you know everything. So you want to just let them know from the beginning so you don't waste time. However, sometimes people are not ready to hear those things. So it's up to you from having conversations to know when to bring these things up. Take full responsibility for your observations. If you recognize that what you observe is what you observe and can be incorrect or different from another observation, it'll be easy to take responsibility of your own observations. It is easier to correct if you are tentative and non-judgmental. So let's say that you were active listening, but you misunderstood something that they said. So then you bring it up and then they correct it. It's always better to be corrected by something that you were paying attention to than when you were not paying attention. Okay, so again, by showing that and then saying, look, can you let me know if what I'm saying is correct or what I'm hearing from you is correct, that shows that you were interested in this person and you just really want to understand them. Refrain from accusing. Accusatory exchanges are not between equals because the accuser assumes he or she is right. You brought this on yourself when you decided to write those letters. Okay? You said these things to the group. You set this up so that we can't trust you. This is your doing. Again, as you can see, you can sort of sense from that person is kind of blaming that person, like, you did it, even though I told you you didn't have to do that or you shouldn't have done that. So again, that will make your client feel bad or worse about themselves, and that's something that's not so great. Refrain from anger. It is tempting to use hostile confrontation to punish a client who has made you angry. You may try to publicly humiliate or denigrate the person. The client can choose not to listen to you and become defensive. Again, who wants to go somewhere to get help but get yelled at, right? Like if someone says, oh, you're doing everything wrong every time you go talk to them, I don't want to be there, So again, refrain from being annoyed or angry at a person, and because you're going to talk like that and no one's going to appreciate that. In the relationship, you have a degree of power. You can wound the other, destroy the relationship, and make the client feel defensive. And that's very easy because you're the person with power and they all know it too, right? Your clients know you could, let's say, maybe take away their children or whatever. So they know that they have to be nice to you. So they want someone who's also on their side and help them, because although they might be doing some stuff that might be bad, They're also there because they want to change. And that's something that you need to keep in the back of your mind. Refrain from judgment. You can never really know entirely what it is like to walk in their shoes. Judgment are generally impossible if you're genuinely tentative when you give feedback, which basically means is you can't really be judgmental if you really don't know what the truth is, right? So when you offer them possibilities of what's going on, then they can choose from that, then that's great. You don't sound like you're judging them anymore. You might like, could it be really this one or could it be this one? Have you considered that? So even though you're like, well, you should have thought about the other thing in your head, really when you say it out loud, it's like, have you ever thought about it this way? What do you think? You know, and that way it doesn't sound judgmental and you're offering them an alternative point of view. Refrain from producing a solution, which basically means giving them the answer. Avoid using should and ought. Like you should do this, you should do that, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. We want people to develop their own solutions. Avoid taking over and offering a solution as the only one. Again, that's something that unless that person really doesn't know what's going on, you want to let them decide how or what are some possible ways that they could approach this, right? And you give them different ways for them to think of the answers or think of the possibilities. That way they know that it's all within them and they just needed someone to help them, you know, basically pull it out. Always collaborate. So things like, what do you think? Or how do you see it? That way, you're inviting that person to come into the conversation and letting them know that what their opinion is or how they see things is also equally valuable. Share the search for an answer or a positive change of direction. So that might be, oh, let's explore this together. Let's think about what the consequences are if we decided to do it this way instead. And that way you're both working on it together. Hopefully they're more interested, and if they're interested, they're more likely to be realistic and dedicated to achieving those goals. Asking permission to share ideas. I have a couple of ideas that might be helpful for you, but I want to be sure it is all right with you to share these now. Or, there are some things my clients have done in the past that work well for them. Would you mind if I share a few of these with you? Again, so these might be other ways to suggest other things when, let's say, we come to a standstill when it comes to possibilities. Client is still in charge and free to reject the offers of ideas. Usually they won't, though. You're saying, you know, this has worked in the past. Can I let you know what we've done before in the past? And that way they're like, sure. And then you can then collaborate that way. Again, there are many ways to say the same thing, but you want to say it in a way that is considered respectful, empathetic, collaborative, and stuff like that. Asking permission to share ideas is a good way to proceed when you may be handling a new case in an urgent situation. Again, if you're in the rush or something, you can say, hey, can I offer some suggestions? What do you think? More than one choice frees up the space as well, lets the person have a choice. And choice is something that is really, really important when it comes to some of your clients because they've never been able to make a choice for themselves before. They were maybe told to do everything that they, have ever done because let's say they have a disability or, they live in an abusive family where the parents never let them make any choices. So by letting them or asking them if they want to collaborate and then they have the choice to say yes or no, most likely they're going to say, yeah, I'll collaborate and stuff like that. On not becoming overbearing. Overbearing is kind of like someone who might be a little bit of a micromanager, like caring too much, where you're like, oh, get off of me and stuff like that. That's what overbearing means. It is tricky to stay where the client is and still express your own concerns. Sometimes the technically correct iMessage is really about your agenda and is not sensitive to the client. And this can be seen as intrusive. Again, sometimes the way that you say things might be too much. So be wary, just pay attention to the situation, and you will kind of get to know that person and know how to approach that person when you want to offer them choices. A woman is suddenly widowed. Her husband died in an accident on Tuesday night. You went to the home as part of the crisis team the night it happened because police said she was extremely upset. Tonight you're doing a follow-up visit. When you talked to her the first time, you learned that she is the second oldest of 5 children. Her brothers and sisters do not live nearby, and she has made no move to call them in spite of your suggestion that she does and your offer to do it for her. You feel that family can be very supportive at a time like this. Okay? So right now, right there, you have reached the conclusion because you and your family are close and supportive. What if her family hates her or she hates her family for some reason? So obviously calling them would not help the situation about her husband dying. So that's something that you need to be considerate of. So if she chooses not to, then don't make a judgment call about her because of that. So that's something that you want to pay attention to. Why do people not do the things that make sense? Okay, we hear a lot about that when it comes to abusive families. Like, why doesn't the wife leave the husband? Because, he beats her up. There are other reasons why that we don't necessarily know if we're not familiar with the situation or familiar with the fact that the world is full of people who have different ways of seeing the world. So that's something that I want you to start thinking about as well. You tell her, I will honor your request, however, I feel you may be avoiding a source of real help. Or, I'm uncomfortable that you don't want your family to be aware of your husband's death. Family support can be very comforting, and I'm sure that they will not be inconvenienced. Suppose it turns out that years ago she and her family had a falling out and she no longer keeps in contact with her family. Like I said before in the previous slide, you do really want to think about these things before you say the things, right? That way, you're not imposing your own values or you think you know the situation, but you really don't, right? So that's very, very important.